Good morning, students. Today you are going to learn about the histology of large intestine and appendix. So let's see the histology of large intestine first. Here are the parts of large intestine. They are cecum, appendix, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum and anal canal. Coming to the histological layers of intestine from inner to outer, they are the mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa and a serosa. And this slide shows the basic four layers of gastrointestinal tract. Mucosa, this one is mucosa. It is composed of lining epithelium, then lamina propria and the muscularis mucosa. The next layer is called as submucosa. This is the layer. And third layer is called as muscularis externa. Fourth layer called as serosa. It is made up of connective tissue which is called as adventitia layer, and if it is lined by a layer of peritoneum, that is single layer of squamous epithelium, then it is called as mesothelium. And this slide shows a cross section of the colon, from which a bit of section of colon, if you keep it under the microscope, you can find out all the four layers. So this is the area which shows the internal aspect of the large intestine, where you can find the openings of numerous intestinal glands or the crypts of lubricants you can make out in this. The opening of numerous crypts will be seen in this. Then you can find out a layer from inner to outer or mucosa, this layer. Then this is submucosal layer. And here is a muscularis externa and the outermost layer which is called as a serosa. And look at this picture. This is the histology of large intestine. This is how you will identify the large intestine under the microscope. So where you can find all the four layers like mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa and the outermost covering which is called as a serosa. Let's see each and individual layers one by one. So coming to mucosa. Mucosa is the innermost layer which is composed of lining epithelium, which is made up of simple columnar epithelium with more numerous goblet cells. The goblet cells will be increasing from cecum to the sigmoid colon. So the goblet cells which you can make out like a white empty spaces. And apart from goblet cells, the epithelium shows microvilli on their cell surface. Then you compare the mucosa of large intestine with the small intestine. In the small intestine, you might have already crossed the duodenum, jejunum, ileum and all. In there, the mucosa is thrown into villi and plicae circularis and presence of Paneth cells which are present in the crypts of lubricant or the intestinal glands. So here in the mucosa of large intestine, all three are absent, like villi absent, plica circularis absent and Paneth cells in the crypts of lubricant absent. But in undistended colon, the walls exhibit only temporary folds which are produced by the mucosa and as well as underlying submucosa. So the mucosal folds which will be temporarily occurs only if the colon is undistended. Then next layer is a lamina propria layer. This is the lamina propria which is occupied by simple tubular intestinal glands. Simple tubular intestinal glands which are also called as crypts of lubricant, which are deeper and longer in large intestine. The lining epithelium for this crypts or crypts of lubricant are same epithelium which is lining the mucous membrane, which is the simple columnar epithelium with more number of goblet cells. The goblet cells are the mucus secreting cells which are providing lubrication to the lumen of the large intestine. Apart from the goblet cells, we could find other kind of cells which are also present in the crypts of liver. They are absorptive cells, then regenerative cells and enteroendocrine cells. Other than intestinal glands, the lamina propria also contains etheric collagen fibers and as well as plasma cells and the macrophages. Then presence of solitary lymphatic follicles. They are the discrete lymphatic nodules which are called as solitary lymphatic nodules, which are present in the lamina propria, which may extend into the muscularis mucosa and as well as into the submucosa layer. Then coming to the last layer of mucosa, which is the muscularis mucosa, which is made up of inner circular and outer longitudinal layer of smooth muscle fibers. So in that mucosa over, so here are the mucosa layers: lining epithelium, lamina propria and the muscularis mucosa. And the next layer is a submucosa layer. This is the submucosa, where you can see the presence of dense irregular connective tissue and as well as the blood vessels. So now you compare the submucosa of the large intestine with that of small intestine. Submucosa of the duodenum, which has a presence of Brunner's gland, and submucosa of the ileum has a presence of Peyer's patches. But here in large intestine there will be a presence of only dense irregular connective tissue and the blood vessels. Now coming to next layer, that is the muscularis externa. Muscularis externa consists of inner circularly arranged smooth muscle fibers and the outer longitudinal muscle fibers. So inner circularly arranged smooth muscle fibers and outer longitudinally arranged smooth muscle fibers will be there. The outer longitudinal muscle fibers forming three thick band-like structures which are called as tinea coli. So this you could make out in the small intestine slide, large intestine slide. And next is the serosa. Serosa is the outermost covering which is covered by the large intestine. It consists of connective tissue and as well as fat cells or the adipose cells. Then it is covered by a layer of peritoneum which is lined by simple squamous epithelium. Then it is called as mesothelium. Submucosa contains dense irregular connective tissue and blood vessels. Then muscularis externa made up of inner circular and outer longitudinal smooth muscle fibers. And serosa, which is also called as adventitia. Why? Because the large intestine is covered by connective tissue layer and also partly it is covered by peritoneum. If it is covered by peritoneum, then it is called as mesothelium. The serosa will cover only the transverse colon and the sigmoid colon, whereas the adventitia, which means covered by only connective tissue, that is in the ascending colon and the descending colon. Then next we will go to the histology of appendix. This is the histological slide of appendix, which you can make out all the four layers. So the layers are: innermost layer is a mucosa, this is a mucosal layer, and this layer is a submucosal layer, and you can find out a muscularis externa layer and the outermost layer which is called as a serosa layer. So now coming to the mucosa. So mucosa, we have a lining epithelium. So lining epithelium is made up of simple columnar epithelium with numerous goblet cells and presence of M cells also. Then coming to the lamina propria. So lamina propria, two important things you have to make out. One is the presence of short tubular intestinal glands. So these are all the intestinal glands which will be present. They are also lined by simple columnar epithelium with the goblet cells, and presence of small and large lymphatic nodules you can find out in the lamina propria. And this lymphatic nodule, which shows a germinal center, it is the most important characteristic feature of the appendix. With this lymphatic nodule we can identify a appendix slide. Then coming to muscularis mucosa. Muscularis mucosa is made up of inner circular and outer longitudinal layer of smooth muscle fibers. Then submucosa consists of connective tissue and blood vessels. Sometimes the lymphatic nodules within the lamina propria may extend to the submucosa. If it is there, that could be also present in the submucosa. Then muscularis externa, it is composed of inner circular and outer longitudinal bundles of smooth muscle fibers. Then the outermost layer, which is called as a serosa layer. So this is the picture where you can find out the layers. So from here to here is a mucosa of the appendix. Then this is the layer called as submucosa. Then this is muscularis externa layer. This is inner circular layer and the outer longitudinal layer of smooth muscles. Then outermost layer, which is called as a serosa. So here are the points for the appendix. Mucosa, it composed of lining epithelium, lamina propria and the muscularis mucosa. Then the submucosa, which is made up of connective tissue, blood vessels and lymphatic follicles, extends from lamina propria. Then muscularis externa, and finally the outermost layer is serosa. So with this point, the appendix is over. Let's see the difference between small intestine and large intestine. So on right side you have a small intestine, all the three parts. So this is the duodenum and this part is jejunum, and you can hear as a ileum. So duodenum, jejunum and a ileum, and this side is a large intestine. So the most important difference is presence of villi and plica circularis in the small intestine. So villi is present here on the small intestine in all the three parts, whereas in the large intestine absence of villi in it. And other than villi, we have a circular mucous folds will be there, that is plica circularis, which is present in small intestine but it is absent in the large intestine. Then coming to the submucosa, in the submucosa the duodenum has a presence of Brunner's gland in it, but the jejunum has only a presence of connective tissue, and in the ileum there is a presence of Peyer's patches. Coming to the submucosa of large intestine, so it just contains simply a dense connective tissue and the blood vessels. If the lymphatic follicle, lymphatic nodule, it extends from the lamina propria, if it is so, it will be observed in the submucosa layer. Then other than that, muscularis externa and the serosa are common for both the small intestine as well as the large intestine. So this finishes the histology of large intestine and the appendix. Thank you.